Welcome to Sitting with Sallie. It's been quite a hiatus with COVID. I'm certainly happy to be back, and I'm going to welcome today my first guest, Lloyd Mack, who is going to talk about a very special program with Rotary called the NOW, Nutritional Weekend for School Children. And welcome, Lloyd.
Thank you very much for having us, Sallie.
I'm glad to.
Yes.
And before we get into the NOW program, I just want you to talk about what Rotary is and you being a member of it.
Well, I've been a Rotarian for 30 years, 25 here in Kenora with the Rotary Club of Kenora. And I joined Rotary because I wanted to give back to my community, to serve my community. And Rotary offered me that opportunity more than twofold, because Rotary is a global organization or a global network of 1.4 million others with the same commitment to their communities. And Rotary, so much more can be done by many and to make change in our communities
By belonging to a group.
by belonging to a group than one or two individuals.
I met a Rotarian in Sicily. It was quite exciting.
Yes. Rotary's in 200 countries, so it's all over the place, and then Rotarians travel, and they often meet one another because they've got pins or whatever, yes.
So what is the philosophy or the mission behind Rotary generally?
Generally, Rotary is to give service above self. That's our overall motto. Service above self. And each year, the RI president has a theme. This year's Rotary International president is Canadian, Jennifer Jones out of Windsor, Ontario. Her theme is Imagine Rotary. Last year's theme was serve to change lives. And each RI president picks a theme that often reflects what we can do to make changes to those persistent issues that we face.
And you take the theme for the year and then try the local Rotary clubs try and work with that
Try
theme.
to work with the theme, yes. Yeah. Like, for example, the year I was president, which was 2008, 2009, the theme was built around health and hunger, and we formed a health and hunger committee here in Kenora that was based on being proactive and getting into the community groups and schools, finding out what their needs were.
And you've continued on that with the Health and Hunger Committee. It's continued since then.
It has continued every year since then. That's when we formed it, but we've carried it on every year, and I'm current co-chair of it with Stacy Shesky, yes.
So back when you formed the committee, what did you decide to commit to back in, I guess, 2008, you said?
Yeah, 2008, 2009. We were already getting some requests at the time from schools, but they were individual one-offs. Somebody knew, well, let's see if the Rotary will, so we tried to be proactive and reach all of the schools and community organizations that were doing nutrition programs. That was what it started. The focus was really on the nutrition programs, the nutritional aspects.
And how did Rotary get involved in those different, and I'm thinking of different places like Jubilee, Fellowship Center,
Yep.
And then the schools and some of the churches?
Yes, we got involved in those organizations. We got involved a lot on the monetary basis, financial support, but we couldn't reach them all with our budget. I mean, we had a fairly healthy budget, but we weren't able to get all their needs. But we were trying to also help them by, you're accessing money elsewhere or you're accessing support elsewhere, and we were passing that information along. But we also got involved over the years, not the first couple, but later on, we got hands-on support to groups like St. Albans had a Friday night meal, the Knox United Church had an evening meal, and we would cook and prepare and serve those meals, take a turn in the rotation kind of thing, and give all the volunteers that were all the time there, they were getting a break.
Bit of a break. So it was a combination of funding different organizations and then stepping in to volunteer.
Yeah, trying to volunteer, yes.
Yeah. So Lloyd, in talking to you beforehand, you mentioned an organization called Campaign 2000.
Right.
And in 2018, they came up with a very interesting report about poverty.
Yes, in 2018, we had a presentation, one of our weekly meetings from the Kenora District Services Board, but it was all about the campaign 2000, and the report basically showed that the level of, or the average level of child poverty in our country was 17.4%. But in the Kenora riding, it was almost double that at 37.4%. And
Did that shock you at the time?
oh, yeah, it was rather shocking. I mean, we about the same time we had our annual, the Health and Hunger Committee had its annual survey of schools and community organizations, asking them what their needs were. We do that every year, but we had added kind of a question that year about, how many meals and stuff are you doing in a day, and it came out that it was 700 meals a day in schools in Kenora on a daily basis. Now that 700 meals might be twice a day for some, but I mean, it's still shocking, 700 meals
That's a lot
in Kenora.
Yep, that's a lot of food
when
for
you
children.
think of it on a 37% basis of children living in poverty, that's more than a third of all children in our riding are living in poverty. Yeah, it was shocking. Yes.
If you hadn't told me, or if I hadn't read the report, I wouldn't have guessed such a high percentage.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
So from that information, I take it that the Health and Hunger Committee decided to do something, become proactive.
Well, it was partly that, and partly the District 5550, which we belong to, which is the Rotary District. It had asked a question of all clubs: what are you doing to alleviate child poverty? And so between the two, we started. There was an ad hoc committee formed in our club, and as co-chair of the Health and Hunger Committee, I was asked to serve on that group. There was 3 or 4 of us, and we reached out to some of the organizations in town that were doing things for child poverty, and we engaged with them to try to find out what all was being done, but also what was being missed, where we might be able to
What are the gaps?
do something. Yeah, what the gap was, and where we might be able to take a bite. And we knew we couldn't do it all. But again, I mean, it was like our other aspects of the Health and Hunger Committee. We knew we couldn't do it all with all the school programs, but we could help. And we said, what else can we do?
And what did you decide? What else you could do?
Well, the group, when we engaged them, the question soon turned to, well, what happens to these children that are accessing the school nutrition programs on weekends? And the club said, yeah, that's a good question. And it was turned back. The ad hoc committee the natural progression was to ask the Health and Hunger Committee to further investigate. We did investigate, and after investigating some other programs and investigating, the Northwestern Health Unit had a couple programs, and they had a guiding document. And after checking that all out, we determined, yes, we were going to work at a Nutrition on Weekends program.
Okay, and we're going to take a short break, and please come back and learn about the Nutrition on Weekends, or NOW program, after the break. Welcome back to Sitting with Sallie. My guest today is Lloyd Mack, who is a Rotarian, and we are talking about the NOW program, Nutrition
on Weekends.
On weekends for students.
Yeah.
And just before the break, you were talking about how you had decided that Nutrition on Weekends was the way to go for Kenora.
Yes, that we thought that there needed to be a program in Kenora. And we partnered with the health unit, the Northwestern Health Unit. They had a guiding document. They had a couple programs being run by parent groups in Red Lake, and they wanted to have it in Kenora as well. So we picked it up and we determined that we had to try a pilot project to begin with to see if we were able to do it both financially and volunteer, whether we could sustain it. And we determined that we would pick a school, and we used the numbers that we had seen in our surveys for the Health and Hunger Committee for the needs in the community, and we picked not the largest nor the smallest, and we approached King George, and that was in the fall of 2018, and in January of 2019 we sent out letters to the school community and offered them to enroll children or their students into the program, and we ended up running it for 15 weeks. We had 17 students each week that we packed a bag for, and we packed the weekend bags with nutritional items as best as we could and accessible items. So we packed 2 lunches and we packed 2 fruits and vegetable, and we had as well, we had 2 breakfasts and 2 snacks. And the extra goes with the lunch. So that was what we were sending home in bags on the weekend to the students.
And this started in March 2019,
Right, yeah,
for 15
March,
weeks.
For 15 weeks, right to the end of the school year. And well before the end of the school year, we were, yeah, we can do this. We're going to be able to do this. And so we had started to send out early invitations to the other schools. And we were expanding it to 8 elementary schools. We were focused on the elementary schools at the time. And we worked at that so that we could start it up in September and expand
Just before, so the packaging, you learned a few things along the way, what to do, what not to do.
Oh, we certainly did. Yes, yeah. The avoiding things that are common allergies, peanut butter or peanuts in bags, and we've continued to learn. It's been an ever evolving. We've taken fish out of the bags because of fish allergies, and other things have come out. We now offer allergy bags, even further allergies, whether it's a fruit allergy or a lactose intolerance.
And the items don't have to be refrigerated.
No, everything's accessible. And one thing we couldn't do is we didn't have the refrigeration for the distribution system. So we also wanted things that the children could prepare if the parents were out at work or whatever. If that was part, they're still working late or.
So after the pilot, you decided that it was sustainable, you'd be able to do it.
Yes.
Did you get any feedback from the teachers?
Early on from the pilot project, we sent out a survey to them in conjunction with the health unit. We sent it not only to the teachers, we sent it to the families. We had some feedback from both. Teachers in particular, they talked about it had improved the attention span of children. Their behaviors, they were learning better because they had food in their stomach. It's all things that nutrition programs in schools have been touting for years.
Proven over and over again.
And has been proven, yes, yeah, over and over again. Yes.
So in September 2019, you're ready to go full bore.
Well, we started out in September, a few schools at a time. Some schools wanted a slow approach. We had a couple of approaches. You could opt into the program. We would send out bags to, the predetermined group, and if they wanted to stay in the program, they didn't have to do anything. If they wanted to get out, they could opt out. Or we just sent a letter to the entire school community, and that took time for a couple of weeks for them to
So each
respond.
school decided.
So by the end of September, early October, we had all 8 elementary schools in the program.
And it was going fairly smoothly.
Oh, it was going pretty smoothly. By December, we had 275 children receiving bags, and by middle of January we had 2,085 at the peak. 2,000. 285. Where did I come up with 2,000? Couldn't imagine doing 2,000. Anyway, yes, but yeah, we were learning the other end of it. Us accessing the food on the store shelves, and being able to get it enough of each item to fill the bags. You don't just walk into most stores and take 200 cans of Chef Boyardee off the shelf.
So you have to do some ordering or arrangement with the stores.
Yeah, we've been working at that for a while. Yeah.
And earlier we had spoken, you said the volunteers also got a lot better.
Oh, we had always said, or I had always said from the very start, that this was going to have to be a community program. That involved not only the financing of it, but the volunteer base. And we had volunteers from churches, from service organizations, individuals off the street that had heard about the program and just thought that it fit what they believed in. Former nurses, teachers, there was quite a range. And we had a lot of volunteers, and we were working so that some groups were doing it, there was about 3 groups that were doing it once a month, and Rotary was doing it once a month, or every 4 weeks. It was kind of handy, Yeah.
And then?
Oh, then COVID came. Yeah. And then COVID came in the spring of 2020. We had gone into Christmas, and then we had gone into the March break, both times with larger bags. We had supplied 5-day-a-week bags. And so we went into the March break with a larger bag, with COVID hanging over the heads. And by the middle of the week, we were talking to our school partners, to the health unit, and we were able to respond to that need a couple weeks. I think there was 1 week after the March break that there was nothing, and then the following week we already were ready to respond to the increased need.
So you went from 2 days of food on the weekends to
5.
To 5.
The 5 days is what we aimed at, was 5 proteins, 5 breakfasts, 5 snacks. Yeah.
That ramped it up quite a bit.
It did, yes. And we had a lot of good partners. We had access to some increased government funding. We had increased funding from the health unit. It became quite visible that the schools were being closed for a while, so there was funds that the schools flowed to us and sent it to the schools for the nutrition programs, because we were picking up the schools. And we also picked up 2 high schools, which we hadn't been doing previously.
We're going to take another short break. Please come back and listen to how the NOW program evolved during COVID.
Oh, thank you.
Welcome back to Sitting with Sallie. Just before the break, I was talking with Lloyd Mack about the NOW program, and he was describing how once COVID hit, the program changed from nutrition on weekends to 5 days a week.
Correct, yes.
And you said, too, you also brought in the 2 high schools.
Yes, we added the 2 high schools coming out of COVID. Part of the discussions with our school partners in the health unit during the March break, when we saw COVID starting, was the fact that how are we going to do this? And the schools went, well, we have school nutrition programs in the high schools. We don't have the NOW program there, but coming out, they aren't going to have access to that school nutrition program either. And so we worked at adding the high schools, and we added probably 50 bags there. And but we lost. Well, we didn't lose.
Numbers changed.
Unfortunately, the numbers changed. They went down overall to about 220. And we had been, like I say, at the end of January, we'd been about 285, and by March we were down to about 270. But adding 50 and going down to 220, we certainly lost access to some people.
But
We
it must
have
have been very difficult to ramp up for 2 days to 5 days.
it was a challenge. It was a challenge to find the food on the shelves. It was a challenge to get uh, accessible foods, to be able to send things home to everybody, similar packaging, and we the whole operation changed from the buying to the packing. We were trying to pack with 10 people or less, so we're trying to keep a fairly close group. It was all Rotarians every week. Our volunteer groups from the churches and the other service organizations fell out of the rotation, not on purpose. They were willing, but we were trying to keep the close contacts to a minimum. And our school partners had to change the way they distributed. Previous to the pandemic, they would discreetly distribute, like we would distribute to the schools, and they would discreetly take them and put them in the bags of students at the schools, the elementary schools. And when we came out of the March break, and we expanded it to the 5 days a week, we had the schools coming to pick it up from where we packed. We had a central distribution packing starting in back in September. We had gone to a central distribution through the health unit that gave us a space. But so the schools would come and pick them up. They would take them, and they had tables set up outside the schools because they couldn't access the buildings. And then people would come and access their bags. Some of the schools took it so that they delivered the bags as well, because people didn't have the way of getting there.
So everything sort of had to change. And
Yeah.
and you continued it. You didn't stop when the school year. You continued it through the summer.
Yes, we hadn't had any intention of going into summer. We saw that there was still a need for the program in summer, but we had budgeted and thought that there was only so much we could do. We had done a lot of we had gotten a lot of good support in the community for our budget from the start, financially, and we had been able to do good buying and sales buying and things like that through the year, and we were coming in expenses under revenue before pandemic hit. And then when the pandemic hit and we made our changes, we got additional funds, like I said previously, through the government and the school nutrition program funding that came our way. But there was other grants became available. The Community Foundation had a pandemic response grant that we received a $5,000 grant from them. There were other grants from organizations. During that time, we received a grant from the Retired Teachers Organization, and it wasn't pandemic based, but we added some more money, and we were able to spend the money and go through the summer, and we were able to get the volunteers through summer of
Good,
2020.
And then I'm assuming another challenge because online, where some students were in school and some were staying home.
Yes, September became a whole nother challenge again, because we did do hybrid packing. We were doing 2-day a week for those that had access to school nutrition programs if they were going to school, and we were doing 5-day a week packages for those that were at home online, virtual learning. And so you're like balancing that along with your allergy bags. And so it started with the shopping. It went through the packing, and the volunteers did wonderful work. I mean, now after 2 years, we're packing bags in half an hour, 40 minutes. It took us that long for 17 kids back in our pilot project. So
You've certainly learned a lot in
we have,
since you
yes.
started it, and it's now continuing. It's now back to, I guess, like
Yes,
everything. School went back to normal.
So yeah, in the fall of 2021, we went back to 2-day a week packages. We've averaged up to 220 bags a week. We still do all 10 schools, the elementary and the high schools, and we We have continued packing through the last year. The the two meals on weekends. We expanded for Christmas and the March break. We expanded for long weekends to 3 days, and we continue to try to find a variety of foods. So it's not every week you're getting the same thing, but you're still trying to balance the protein, the accessibility, the finances. I mean, and that's another thing we're finding is costs are rising for us just like
Yes.
everybody else because of food costs
Yeah.
and distribution, or if we do get anything shipped in, the cost of transportation. And
A couple of points that you've made through your talk is the NOW program is providing advantages to students because they're going to learn better if they eat better, which
Right.
I think is really important, and also the discretion that you take to you don't know who the students are, and
we have no idea. When we do have the schools do a registration, like we give them the forms. They do a registration of the need, and the need, they can change. You can say this person has left the program. We have people leave the program, people add the program, people's situations change, but we leave them to the schools. Like we give them the registration, the forms, but the schools collect them. They keep them on their files. We really don't care, and we really don't want to know. And I think that's how all the school nutrition programs themselves work. Is they're open to everybody, but they're a quiet thing in the fact that they don't want it to be a stigma, and we don't want it to be a stigma.
No. Overall, you must be very proud of the success that the program has become.
Well, we're pleased with the success. As Rotary, we don't want any child to go hungry, and we think that the Nutrition on Weekends program is reaching its goal. It's meeting that goal of making food accessible to children that don't have access through the school when the school nutrition programs are closed.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Lloyd.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, it's a very important program, and it was interesting to learn about all the details and your bumpy ride to get here.
Thanks.
Yeah. And thank you for joining us on Sitting with Sallie, and until next time.